get so mad, there's no controlling me. My thoughts get so bad, I'm like, oh God, here goes. I lost all feeling from my head to my toes. You said some shit that I can't let go, so just stay tuned for the rest of the show.
I often talk about the importance of being a good ally, but also knowing who your allies are as well.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, I don't want you to name names, but from a characteristic point of view, and just thinking about the support that you had, what did that look like? What does allyship, or what did allyship look like for you?
Yeah. I didn't really experience allyship until probably about 3 months before I came out. I didn't have it, partly because I was in such a closed world where I just knew not to talk about it. I found, acceptance in other environments, through Reddit forums or different things or social media, and just, it was good to have those conversations. But I didn't tell anyone, like any of my friends, anything like that, till about 3 months before I was transitioning, or knew that I was going to transition on, come out on March 1st. And I told some really close friends, and they're like, okay, cool. We're still your friend. We're here for you. We want to be supportive. And true allyship is, it's not performance based on how that person looks or how they're perceived in community. It's standing alongside. It's even done in a corrective stance as well. It's like, hey, you need to check your attitude, or you handled that situation wrong. And I'm guilty of this. I've had an ally, um, and I think this happens with trans people, where we develop really thin skin at times, and it's honestly, it's environmental, because maybe we have experienced it, really bad situations, and it makes us keep our head on a swivel. And there was one, for instance, where someone in my mind's eye, gave me a dirty look, and like, just like, oh my gosh, trans person, whatever. And my friend, this ally, saw it in a completely different context. But because in my mind, I was dealing with a bunch of things, I saw it differently. And I mentioned this to my friend, and they're like, "No, I did not see that whatsoever. That's not the case." And they called me out on it, like, "Oh, that makes sense." And but
That's
allies are,
such a good point. It's such a good point. You've got to be open to receive allyship as
yeah,
much as
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And then there's allies who will stand up and say, okay, you know what, I don't think what's going on is fair. How can I support you? They'll be at a march, or they'll be at an event, or they'll lend support on social, and they'll be there at a trade show, or an event, and give a kind word. There's so many different ways to be an ally, but I always come down to this thought. It's like, people don't know you're an ally until you tell them you're an ally. And it doesn't have to just be the blanket, I'm an ally. It could just be like, hey, I see you, I'm here, what can I do? And just being kind to people, that goes such a long way. If we would go back to what, grade 3, when we or even kindergarten for that matter, when we're taught, be kind, keep our hands to ourselves, and just truly understand those principles, this world would be so different and such a better place. And I do believe in, hey, be there for others, let your voice be heard. um and just be at a place to where people know that you are supportive and you do care for them. And I think that's the biggest thing and best thing that you can do to be an ally. It's not wearing a pride flag, pin, or having your pronouns somewhere. Those are all things that show allyship. But true allyship is done in my opinion, one-on-one.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
really
it's
agree.
being there for other people. So
Yeah. There are so many tick boxes. And actually, I had again another conversation that I had yesterday with somebody was about an organization, and an ex-employee of that organization had told me some of the things that they had gone through and some of the things they had experienced.
yeah,
And if you look at this organization's website and if you look at their messaging, it's on point.
yeah,
You would think they are ridiculously inclusive, and they will not tolerate discrimination, and yet what the person described, and it wasn't isolated either, and that person wasn't the only one to experience some serious levels of discrimination.
yeah.
um exactly what you say, wearing a badge, or saying, and I know, when I think back actually a couple of years, you just made me think about companies that decided to have a black screen when, after, for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
Companies who decide, well, it's Pride Week, we're going to have, we're going to put our logo in rainbow colors,
yeah.
or whatever. Yeah, it's great messaging, but if your actions don't follow, why are you bothering? You're bothering your marketing team, right, to come
Exactly.
up with fresh logos and fresh, it just doesn't, it doesn't
So
wash. Exactly what you said, it doesn't wash.
so here we are, a few days before June 1st, which starts Pride Month.
Yeah,
And it's funny, you can watch like clockwork. All the companies go and, be a rainbow logo. And, it's kind of a joke within the LGBTQIA plus community to see this corporate, pride turn. And it's even now, like, I mean, I live in Texas. Texas is not a friendly state towards trans individuals from a legal standpoint. And obviously Florida with Infocom and whatnot, which is going to be interesting to say the least, but we'll figure it out. But you'll see all these companies that will turn their logo, and it's like, okay, that's great, but what are you doing to vote with your dollars? What are you doing to take a stance and say no? Some of these laws that are being pushed are, unconstitutional or unfair or discriminatory. Where are we doing, why are we so caught up in this performance nature to where it's got to look right? It's like, why can't we actually do the right thing? Give me a company that, will not have a pride logo, but be one of the most inclusive companies that you could ever go around or be a part of, and I'm completely content, because they're going to speak, they're going to speak with their corporate action. They're going to speak with their bylaws and their policing of their company standards, more than they will, or any traction that they would get from just the logo on LinkedIn being changed.
Exactly. And it's hard to get that through to people, because then I've also had conversation where people say, but then how do we let people know that we are, they see it as a first step, that
Yeah.
that we, this is where what we're working towards, maybe, or
That's a big question. And sorry, I don't mean to cut you off,
no,
but it comes down to company culture. If you're hiring people based on their true ability as opposed to what boxes they check from a socioeconomical or creed or orientation standpoint, you're going to let your company culture be very organic. And one of the most, and I do think from a LGBTQIA plus standard, there is a little bit of coaching, just knowing, okay, this is a open and accepting place. I think verbiage like that should be definitely introduced. But also allowing individuals to, express themselves and to be comfortable in those corporate environments. And it was one of the most amazing things to me when I'm walking through the office of one of my clients and I see pride flags, and I just like, oh, you know, what's this? Like, oh, well, we allow our employees to decorate their cubicles however they want, and there were safe place stickers. And no, I was never going to have an interaction with those people, but I personally felt a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more secure knowing that I was in an environment that embraced diversity and inclusion. And that made a huge difference. So it comes down to company culture, and even from a
Yeah.
company standpoint, not tolerating it when there is discrimination, when there is acts of, you know, and it's not just against transgender individuals, it could be across any person. We're at a point where this should be eradicated. Honestly, there's no place for this in our culture, and those who harbor it, those people are so toxic. They will ruin and completely bankrupt a company's culture quicker than anyone else.
And you know, I've come to the conclusion that those people, and I'm going to stereotype here and say they're bullies,
I completely agree.
and it's it's more than out of ignorance and fear, because I just don't buy that in 2023 you can use the excuse of ignorance.
Yeah.
I just don't buy it. There is, if you are absolutely committed to being the kind of human being that will not tolerate but accept that other people have different lives and different religions and different beliefs and different backgrounds and experiences, if you are genuinely committed to that, then you will make the effort to learn.
Yeah,
or at the very least say, I don't understand it, but I accept you.
Yeah, that is the golden statement. If you're someone listening to this or watching this and you're like, well, I don't know where to begin right there. You know, you knew that person before they did, you know, transitioned or whatever. They've not changed. You know, they're still that same person. Meet them at that level. Meet them at that point. Be their friend. Like I told you earlier, I had someone come up to me and it's like, I don't get this. You know, I've known you for a few years, but I know you, and I'm here for you. And that meant the world to me, that I would actually have someone that wasn't going to, and here's my thing. I don't want to be celebrated as a trans person. That's never my goal. That's never the thought process. And I told someone, it's like, if me being trans is the only thing people notice, then I'm not a very interesting person, or I'm not a very strong person in my field. I want to be known for my abilities and my character and my kindness and how I, you know, view my gender identity is way down the line.
Exactly.
And I think it comes down to, honestly, this is responsibility of the community, is to be more accepting and more true to themselves, to where they're not always having to look for that validation from others. Be comfortable with yourself.
And that goes for whatever the challenge is.
Exactly. It's not just, you know, it's one of those things. If we can learn how to be just kind to ourselves, even, and just like, okay, I'm going to be okay. You know, this is going to be fine. I'm going to make it through this, and give yourself grace, you know, regardless of whatever situation.
I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness.
if you wanna play tough,